Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our monthly free webinar. Today we have a special guest from SampleServe, Russell Schindler. Say hi, Russell. It's on camera there.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about revolutionizing environmental monitoring and some digital tools for accuracy, efficiency, and proactive audit management. So Russell's going to be the bulk of this session today. But before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few things. Russell, if you can move to the next slide. Just some webinar housekeeping. If you've taken our webinars before, you might be used to this setup, but this webinar will be recorded and will be available for you shortly after the end of the session today on our webpage and YouTube channel. All attendees, if you notice, are muted, and you'll be muted for the entire session. If you have any questions or comments, we ask that you utilize your question toolbar below there on the tab, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the session. Next slide. Okay, great. So what we're going to talk about today, and I probably should introduce myself. I'm Tracy Sears, I'm the president of PGLA, and I will be talking a little bit before Russell starts, just on a few topics. One is, as most of you are probably aware, how critical sampling plays a role in ensuring that quality test results are accurate. I also wanted to talk a little bit about accreditation of sampling activities and the options that are available for field sampling organizations. And then we're going to jump right into Russell's presentation from SampleServe on the introduction of some new technologies that are out there for monitoring sampling activities. Next slide. So just in general, impacts of field sampling and measurement, just a few things that come to mind and why it's so important to monitor your sampling activities, the performance of your personnel, is at the end of the day, bad sampling can result in so many different things, causing organizations to resample, maybe make bad decisions, inaccurate test results, and again, cost to your organization. So some critical things that sampling organizations should be mindful of is ensuring sampling plans are as accurate as possible, statistical validity, ensuring representativeness, and this all assists with accurate decision making. Also want to make sure that you have appropriate equipment and prevent any cross-contamination. Storage and transportation is something sampling organizations should be cautious of, prevent any mishandling, data integrity, and also to make sure competency of your personnel is there, they're trained. Some states require particular licensing depending on what you're doing. So these are all things that, again, sampling organizations really are critical to part of that process with ensuring that the data is accurate as possible. If a testing facility gets a bad sample, it could be tested inappropriately. They might have to throw it out. Again, it might have to be retested, and the whole project just goes to waste. So there's so many things I think everyone agrees, sampling is a critical part of that whole process. But pointing out these things that organizations should really be cautious of when out there they're doing this type of work is what we wanted to point out today. And next slide there. Also, with some of these things that I pointed out, I wanted to just mention before we get started is that many organizations, are they utilizing accreditation? And has organizations thought about, safeguarding these things to make sure that those critical points are there and getting looked at and being monitored by your organization, but also by a third party? So I wanted to just inform everyone that PGLA offers accreditation to field sampling and measurement organizations. And we offer that in two different ways. One is through the National Environmental Field Activities Program, which is called TNI NEFAP. And this is through the NELAC organizations, where most people are maybe familiar with the laboratory accreditation program, but they also have a separate program just for individuals like you that are out there doing field sampling and measurement activities. And it utilizes ISO 17025. It has specific language and criteria for sampling and measurement organizations. And again, this is unique to the industry. It's a standalone accreditation program available just really for field samplers. Another option is that some facilities are also part of a laboratory. They might want to include their field sampling organization as part of that accreditation. What the changes in 17025, that is an option. You can include your sampling criteria with your 17025 lab accreditation now. So both of them are very good programs. I do feel that the T&I NEFAP program has a little bit more teeth in it. It does include 17025, but the language I feel is a little bit more designed for the field sampling measurement groups. Okay, next slide. And here I just provided some accreditation resources. So talking about T&I, there's information there where you can find, or links there where you can find information about the T&I NEFAP program. I also included a link here about our field accreditation programs for that particular standard. Again, also ISO would be sufficient as well. And I wanted to let everyone know there is a workshop T&I is going to be doing actually next week on developing and implementing a sampling and analysis plan for environmental studies. And I included a link here if you wanted to take a look at that. I believe it's a pretty reasonable cost. And if you're part of a larger organization, I believe T&I is giving like a group discount for that too. So take a look at that. But anyway, I don't want to take a lot of time away here from Russell. But I did want to point out that, you know, again, accreditation is just as important for samplers than it is for laboratories. And I know a lot of sampling organizations might use other standards, such as maybe even 9001. Again, that's a very general base standard for your organization. It's not a bad standard. I'm not saying anything against it. But taking a look at other technical standards and quality standards that are available is recommended. And I think that, you know, T&I is really trying to get the word out there. PJLA is trying to get the word out there. It's something we offer and something that, you know, we hope that people will consider in the future. But I've known Russell now for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years. And he used to also be on the same committee as me for the T&I NEFAP committee and through the T&I environmental community. And Russell actually lives in Michigan, just where PJLA is at. We're in Troy, but he's a little bit farther away from us in Traverse City, Michigan. And he's been in this industry for a long time, and I think he would agree there needs to be some type of oversight. And I think you'll really be interested in what he has to tell you. But a little bit about Russell before we get started. So Russell holds a bachelor's in earth science from Western Michigan University and is a professional geologist in Pennsylvania with over 36 years in the industry. He has pioneered digital data management systems and environmental remediation techniques through SampleServe, where he is a founder and principal. His portfolio includes 7 patents, 5 in remediation technologies, and 2 in digital reporting and chain of custody solutions. As a founder of TC New Tech, a technology showcase and investment group, he continues to advocate for innovation and community engagement, emphasizing the role of emerging tools in advancing environmental data quality and validation. So Russell, I will thank you again for joining us on our hosted webinar today, and I will let you take it from here.
Great. Well, thank you, Tracy, and I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully this is going to open some eyes to some people on what's out there and available in terms of digital tools. So obviously we're talking about environmental sampling, and and I'll talk a little bit more about my company here and how I got started in this. But right now, about 98% of all the samples collected out there, I think it's probably even higher than that, are all collected using paper-based workflows, right? People are out in the field, they're writing down data on paper forms, they're filling out their sample bottle labels by hand. Sometimes the labels are pre-printed by the laboratory, but they still have to write their name, date, and time on there. And then they have to go back to the office and then enter that data back at the office. And then when the samples get delivered to the laboratory, the person in the laboratory has got to be able to interpret the handwriting. One of the things that prompted me back when I was sampling is actually had a laboratory call me up one time and ask. They called the main number and said, "Hey, could you please talk to Russell Schindler and please ask him to write his 3s and his 5s better because we can't tell the difference." And I was like, "You're right, I can't even tell the difference." So penmanship is a big problem. And then incomplete forms. I mean, if you work at a lab, you've probably seen chains of custody that weren't completely filled out. So the lab interpretation and then also getting the data from the field back at the consulting engineering office, they got to type that data in. And then they use all that information when the lab's data comes back and the field notes are in. They'll generate all these reports using GIS or AutoCAD type software, creating tables with Excel. So that's really the workflow right now, and it's very labor intensive. I mentioned that SampleServe has been around a while, and we started as a sampling as a service company. So 2001, state of Michigan had changed some rules about collecting environmental samples. I recognized an opportunity. They basically started requiring low flow sampling. I recognized an opportunity because there was confusion in the industry. And prior to that, I had my own consulting engineering company. There was confusion about low flow sampling, required specialized equipment and lots of extra data, right? You had to, enter data every 3 to 5 minutes on the stabilization, all that. There's a lot of data. So I started SampleServe as a sampling as a service company. Well, we were successful. We actually grew. We ended up having about 8 offices across the country. But larger companies started asking if they could started building software over the years to make our own operations more efficient, right? Because there's a lot of data. I was like, we got to figure out ways to print labels and, generate these reports. So I was like, I got all this data. I was a sampling company, and I was like, what, our customers, I know they want tables and graphs, and I could generate those for them. And then I was like, if I work with the laboratory and get the lab results, I could actually put their data on a map as well. And so we added our software and our graphics reporting as kind of a value add to our sampling services. Well, over the years, probably starting about 2011, 2012, companies started to go to me and just go, "Hey, Russ, we really like to do our own sampling, but your software is pretty cool. Is there any way we could just use your software?" And I was like, "No." I'm like, "I'm not a software company. I'm a geologist," right? So, it was about 2018. I'd heard this a bunch of times. I'm like, what? Maybe I should let them use the software. So we had to reconfigure things and, make it so that there was privacy and you couldn't see somebody else's data, that kind of thing. But in 2018, we turned into a software as a service company. We've had our first mobile app for collecting samples in the field. I'm going to show you that here in a second. In 2019, in 2022, I actually sold the physical sampling side. So now we are just a software company. And now in 2025, I should have updated this slide. We've got lots of large companies using our software. Hundreds of samples are collected. It's getting close to thousands of samples collected every day using our software. So, and not just in the United States, even in other countries. So it's pretty exciting. So what our platform is instead of using paper-based products for planning and sample collection, we actually have a project management tool that you'll access via a web portal, and I'm going to get into it a little bit. And then once you have your project planned out in terms of sampling, you're going to push that scope of work to the mobile field app. It's pretty simple to do that. And then you're going to use the app to go out in the field and collect the data It actually ties in with a thermal label printer, and you're going to print labels at the time of sampling. So the date and the time are right on there. We capture your signature with the mobile app as well. And then we have a separate lab login app that we give away to the laboratories at no cost, so that they can actually receive that data using a mobile application. They're able to scan our QR codes that are on the lids, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we have our own graphics reporting product, right? So that's kind of how we started, and people started asking for it. So we really just expanded on that. And so we can keep everything digital. You can literally do this whole process without using a pen or paper. Even our labels are actually polyvinyl labels, so they're waterproof. So it really reduces data entry. One of the things, a common problem with paper processes, somebody will write MW1 and it's actually MW-1. A software is going to think it's a different ID because of that dash. And so you never have to write MW1 again. You're going to actually select it from a list. And so it'll get printed on the way it was originally printed in. So it's a big mistake in terms of lab data deliverables because somebody's typing it in and the person in the field didn't write that dash. So now it looks like there's a new sample ID in terms of the software computers out there, traditional ones. So, these little things in terms of digital stuff really kind of streamline the process. So the backbone of the whole operation in terms of benefits from the software is the mobile field app, right? That's where all the data starts digital and then it stays digital from that point on. The app has the ability to GPS tag everything, right? So whenever you're collecting a sample, as soon as you hit that sample button, we get a GPS location on the device. There's also the official location. You may be working out of the back of your pickup truck. When you hit sample, we're going to get the back of your pickup truck, but the official location might be 20 feet away. So we got both of that information. So we know how far away you were when you collected a sample. We can collect photographs, right? As many photographs as you want. There's no limit to how many photographs you take, so you can really document where you're sampling. And there's been many instances where a project manager is able to see those photographs right away and go, hey, you're on the wrong well. You're on MW7, you're supposed to be on 8. So there's lots of benefits there. And then we track everything, right? So we know where you were when you entered every piece of data. All the photographs are right there, and then you'll see our chain of custody. And one of the benefits of the field app is that it saves technicians about 20% of their time. Some customers have even said up to 40% of the time, because they can find locations very quickly because it knows where they're standing and it knows where the location is at, so they can find them quickly. We also have photographs. One of the problems, especially up where I live, there's always snow on the ground in the wintertime. And so having these photographs, multiple photographs located that you took in the summertime, you're able to find, like MW5 here, you'd be able to see that it's just a few feet away from that pole from the photograph. So it allows you to quickly find that location. So we had a client down in Indianapolis. They had this project down. This is the actual map here. It would normally take them 2 days. All they did was go out and collect groundwater elevations on like 40 or 50 wells. They weren't even sampling, just getting groundwater elevations, but it took them 2 days because it was a blank field. They had torn down all the buildings and it was a grassy field with 2-3 foot tall grass. And just finding all these wells was very difficult. Well, with our app, they were able to, because of the GPS location, they'd be able to find them very quickly. And it took a 2-day project just to collect groundwater elevations and turn it into a 1-day project because they did not spend time walking around trying to find these things. So, it is a big time saver. And then they don't have to go back to the office and type the data in. The data is all delivered before they even leave the site. So the mobile field app, the functionality is extensive and it keeps getting more and more every day, but it's all touch screen. We recommend using a stylus because if you're sampling, you're usually wearing gloves, and gloved hands on a touch screen don't work real well. But we print the labels in the field right at the time of sampling, and you can see our labels are unique in that they've got several parts to them. The label's got the main part. They capture your signature, you get signed and put on that label that's unique to that sample. And then the 2 QR codes, one of those is designed to go onto the lid of the container, and that's for the laboratory's benefit. And the second one is optional, but you can leave that at the sample location. Let's say you're doing asbestos, or maybe you sampled a drum. You can leave that QR code at the sample location and later come back to it and actually pull up the analytical results for that sample. So it just creates a lot of efficiencies there. And then if you're doing asbestos, you'll be able to tell that whether it's positive or negative. And then you ship the field data in a nice organized fashion. You can right from the mobile device in the field as soon as you're done sampling. And it includes the photographs. You can see up here, we got the person's name, the date and the time that the sample was collected. We even have a snapshot of the person whenever you collect a sample, and you'll see our chain of custody process. You're going to take a selfie. The sample locations, where they took the samples from, and then all the field data. This is a low flow sampling, and anything else, associated with that sampling is right there as well. So, and you can share that both as a CSV file, the raw data in an Excel table, and then also as a PDF like you see right here. So, and these are customizable. The company can put their logo on and everything. So, whoever the client is just uploads their logo and it's right there. Our chain of custody process, this is the heart and soul of our whole process, and we've got 2 patents on this. First, you're going to log in with your username and password, right? Everyone knows never give up your password. And every time you collect a sample and transfer custody, you're going to sign your name and you're going to take a selfie. So there's no question on who collected that sample. And then at the same time, we get a date and time stamp and a GPS coordinate. So there's no question about where you were and what you did. So whenever you hit that sample button, we record where you're at. So we know with certainty the who, the where, and the when of every sample collected and every transfer of custody. So this gentleman here, he's logged in under his username and password. He signed his name and took a selfie, and then he printed that label. And that label has that signature that he just signed on that. So here's what our chain of custody looks like coming off of this. They get sent to the laboratory and whoever else you want to share it with. Again, it goes as an electronic file. It's a PDF and a CSV or a JSON file to the laboratory, whichever they like. And you can see it's got all the same stuff. There's 2 exceptions to this chain of custody. It's got everything else the same, date and time, parameters, how many bottles for each one, sample IDs. The exceptions are you can read it, right? It's nice and neatly printed. And then the other exception is down here is we actually break out who collected each sample. So down here, there's a guy named Jake Cadle collected these samples here. And then Jake gave those samples to me. This is that transfer of custody. And there's the date and time that this happened and the GPS coordinate when he relinquished and I received. There's the selfie and my signature at that time. And then we took it to the lab, or I took his samples to the lab, and here's the lab receiving it. Again, date, time, GPS, signature, and selfie. And sorry, I hit the button too soon. And then my samples are down there as well. So a couple of cool features about the app, this is just a screenshot of the app, is, one of the most common questions we get is like, well, how do I know that my data is secure? How do I know I'm not going to lose the data? So we have this sync indicator icon built into the app. And when that arrow is green, it means that it actually connected to the cloud and then compared the data for that sampling event on your device to the data in the cloud. And when it's a perfect match, it means it's pushed all the data to the cloud and everything's been received, that arrow is going to be green. If you're not connected to the cloud, you're out in a remote area and you don't have it, that arrow will be yellow. And you can actually force sync. You go back, go to the coffee shop, connect to the internet, and then tap that button. It will happen automatically, but if you want to make it happen faster, you tap that icon. It'll actually force sync everything, and then it'll turn green if it's connected and everything matches. So you can lose the tablet. You can leave it on the roof of your car and drive down the road, never to be seen again. If that arrow was green when you lost the tablet, you did not lose your data. a typical Android tablet nowadays is about $150, $170, depending on where you get it. So the data is actually way more valuable than the device is. So so we put that sync indicator on, then it allows you to sleep nice and cozy at night, not having to worry about where your data is. Now, another feature we have is this custody button. That's how you're going to start the whole chain of custody process. You would tap that and you're going to walk through that. I'm not going to bore you with all those details, but that's how it works there. And then one of the kind of quality control features that we have is it's always a good practice to sample from the cleanest wells first to the dirtiest last. And you can see down here after each location, if you've uploaded historical data or that data is in and available to our system, we actually look back at the last time it was sampled and total up all the contaminants that were detected. And we populate a number here. And then we sort from clean to dirty by default. Now you can tap this button and resort alphanumerically, so MW2 would be first, 4 would be second. And so if you got a big long list of locations, it allows you to find things quicker that way. But the default listing is from cleanest first to dirtiest last, and then alphanumeric. If you've got a bunch that are, haven't been tested before, it'll default to alphanumeric. So, which is a big quality control mechanism, and that's the order that you should sample them in. Another item we have here is it handles all the QA/QC. If you're doing an MS/MSD or a blank, it's listed right with that location. But if you're doing other QA/QCs like field blanks, equipment blanks, trip blanks, those will all be listed down here because they're not associated with a location. A sampling event, yes, but not a specific sample location. So handles all the QA/QC stuff beautifully, and it's viewable to the field technician, but not to the laboratory in terms of like duplicates and that kind of stuff. And then if you want to add new samples on the fly, you're out there, scope of work changes, or some reason you got to collect another sample, you'll hit that plus button. It walks you through a process where you can add new samples, new parameters, print the labels, everything you need. And then we also have the ability to create custom forms. So if you want to do a well inspection while you're out there, you can create that for each location, or you can do an entire event form like a tailgate safety meeting that you want them to do before they start work in the morning, or maybe you want them to do a calibration checklist or something like that. You can create those forms and then add that to that event. They just tap that icon there and it opens up that form and they start answering those questions. So, and then we have a deal with in situ meters. If you're familiar with water quality meters, in situ is a very good brand out there. They got a Bluetooth capable meter, and we have this agreement with them where we're able to help push their data into our platform. If you're doing low flow sampling, it'll populate the data, really makes the workflow and the data entry a lot more seamless. And then there's other companies out there that we're in talks with right now in terms of connectivity. So here's essentially the low flow sampling form. If you're doing low flow sampling, we calculate the stability for you. We use the US EPA methodology. It can be, this sampling media is wide open, whatever you want to sample for, and this is just an example of the low flow. But it's good for groundwater, surface water. We really don't care what you're putting in the container. We do need to know what the media is before you start, because there's different questions for different media and different units of measure. But it's good for all these different products here. And even some other stuff, like I once went down, if you remember the train derailment down in East Palestine, Ohio, I went down and trained some people how to use the app for collecting dead minnows out of that creek that was impacted down there. So, like I said, we don't really care what it goes in the container. We can accommodate that. So here, as one of the cool technologies we have is we actually have this technology for recording screen activity. So whenever you log in and you're collecting samples, we're actually doing a recording of this, and I'll explain why this occurs. It was originally used for like tracking user experience and user interaction so we can make the software better. But you can see in this one, this person's collecting a drinking water sample. We kind of blurred out the face, so, you know, and it just watches them while they're doing the entire sample collection. So it's everything that they're doing on the tablet, we have a recording of every time somebody collects a sample. And then you can see up here, it tells you where they're at. I can actually dig into this and find out the GPS location. We know what time everything occurred. Here's all the timestamps on all the different clicks. So what that does is it allows us to kind of make sure that the samples are collected properly. They do have to allow the screen recording when they, you know, upload the app, and you know, you got to give it, allow it to do this. But you know, our customers here have made it so that the technician has to allow it in order for them to do the work, because they want that screen recording, because it allows them to verify that data integrity, right? Let's say you're doing low flow sampling and you're not able to get something stabilized. Well, sometimes people, I don't, you know, I'm not going to throw out any names, but I've seen it where people will edit numbers so that they achieve stability faster. Or I'll give you another example here in a second on the next slide. You know, it just really kind of keeps everybody making sure that they're following that SOP, because everything's being recorded, your GPS and everything. We, you know, we don't have access to the cameras or anything like that, so we don't see through the camera. We just see what's on that screen. And so it creates accountability, right? And on this next slide here, this is not this person, but it was a real example. We were recording the screen. This is kind of how we kind of realized the value of the screen recording. We were looking at it for UX, UI stuff. Well, this is a drinking water sampling project in Texas, and the user was, you know, one of the protocols is you have to have this flush of the sample port before you start collecting your field data and before you start, you collect the sample. Well, we have a built-in flush timer, and the person was starting the flush timer, and they're supposed to wait the 5 minutes before they collect all the residual chlorine and, you know, pH and stuff like that. Well, 20 seconds into the 5-minute flush, they were entering all this data, and we had it recorded, right? So I thought to myself, I wonder if this is a isolated incident, or should we dig deeper? Well, unfortunately, I looked around and it wasn't an isolated incident. That a lot of people were doing this. And so I informed the client, I'm like, hey, and I sent them some of these videos. And obviously they then confronted the sampling technicians. I don't know what happened to them, but you know, now all the technicians are aware, like, hey, it's being recorded, so it keeps them honest, right? We're not seeing any of this. And one of the other things we did as well is we built in a lockout. So when you hit that start on that 5-minute flush, it actually locks out all the other data entry screens. You have to wait for the 5 minutes to be up before it'll let you enter any more data. So so it's just, that's one of those things where you can like build in functionality to make them comply with the standard operating procedures. So and then, you know, if you have any questions, you can actually look at these videos later, because we have them, you know, going back to since the start of this project, so they can be pulled up and you can validate that they're following the SOPs. And so we also have the ability to do data entry validation. So in essence, that allows you to kind of put guardrails around certain values that are entered. For instance, if you're entering pH, you want to make sure that they're not going to enter a pH of 15, right? So you can prevent certain values from being entered, and you can also require a comment. So in this particular range, it says allow pH from 5 to 9, and then if it's outside that, below 5 or above 9 require a comment, because it could happen, right? But that's an unusual circumstance, and you can actually say the comment needs to be, recalibrate your meter. So whatever that is, you're able to customize the data entry, validation, and what you want them to do. Just confirm that their meter is calibrated properly. So those are the kind of things that can be done as well to validate data. And then one of the these alerts really help you. We have this alert system, for instance, and we had a client who was a wastewater treatment plant client, and one of their problems is they were missing some samples, getting bacteria samples being submitted to a laboratory on their effluent, right? The wastewater treatment plants discharging into a surface water, and field technicians were required to collect a bacteria sample every day, right? And report that they're not discharging, bacteria above regulatory limits into the surface water. Well, once in a while, a field technician would collect the sample, and they'd put the sample in the refrigerator, and somebody else is going to take it to the lab. Well, that somebody else forgot to take it to the lab, right? So the field technician doesn't know. Everyone's thinking that that sample's getting taken to the lab, and the next day, the sample's not at the lab. The sample's now expired. It's not a valid sample, and they get a fine or a penalty, some kind of demerit for not getting to their client, right? And that's the problem. They're contracted to a municipality, and it's happened a couple of times. The municipality's getting a little ticked off, right? It's like, hey, we're paying you to do this, do it. And so we built in an alert system. So it's customizable, where you just set an alert, you define it how you want it. And what they wanted was, if that bacteria sample has not been delivered to the laboratory by 1 p.m., send an email or a text message or both to the plant manager and to the technician, right? So an alert goes out, and it's called managed by exception, right? If that bacteria sample gets to the lab and is checked in by 1 p.m., nothing happens because it's working as expected. But it's if it's not there, the alert goes out, the plant manager can go, oh, that's right, the guy's on vacation. I'm supposed to be the one delivering it to the lab. Whatever the solution may be, they've got time to go get it done. So the next slide is just, you can do sample is not delivered, it's not complete, like they forgot to collect it. So there's all kinds of options you can put in there in terms of times. And so the point is, and part of this whole wastewater treatment plants are unique in that they're sampling constantly, right? Sometimes they're sampling every shift. Some of the analysis they're doing in-house, some they're sending out to third-party labs. They've got daily shift samples, daily samples, weekly samples, monthly samples, quarterly samples, and annual samples. And it actually gets very confusing. And trying to make sure, when things are done. So in our software, we have this ability to create these sampling events, and it automatically will reoccur. So your daily event is supposed to be the same every event. It just automatically repopulates back to the calendar. You can just say reoccur every single day, similar to like a meeting in Google Calendars or your calendar event. You want it to be a weekly meeting on the first Wednesday of every month. We can do that with a sampling event where you just say, here's the event. Then you can have another quarterly event, and then you can have a semi-annual event and an annual event. You can just say every year, repopulate this on the second week of January, and it'll repopulate. So really allows you to kind of keep everything organized. Takes a little bit to get it set up, but once it's set up, it's set it and forget it. All they have to do now is it'll populate to that mobile app, and field technician comes in, logs in, sees what he's doing that day, and goes out and do it. And this helps prevent those things that are on paper and not as clear as just pulling up your app and doing the thing at the top of the list and then going to the second one and going to the third one, that's what you're supposed to do that day. So it really helps keep things organized. So one of our big clients is we've got a contract where they're using our software for sampling over 7,200 separate municipal utilities across the state of Texas. So they're collecting 64,000 samples a year. On any given day, there's about 45, 50 people out there sampling. They're out there sampling right now as we speak, collecting drinking water samples. And the benefit of this software is that it's increased their efficiency, right? The field technicians are our biggest fans. They love it because they go out, collect the sample, and all they got to do is get the samples to the lab. They don't have to go back to the office anymore and enter that data. The chain of custody is filled out for them. They're not sitting in the parking lot of the laboratory or FedEx or whatever, trying to get the chain of custody completed before the lab or the shipping company closes. And then there's also guardrails on that data entry, right? So they know that they can't, fat finger type in a pH that's not valid. And then the SOP, right? We've got that flush timer locked out so that they can't collect samples, or collect data while the flush timer is running. And so there's other features that they like about it as well. It prints the labels, there's no penmanship issues. Everything's all documented very efficiently. So like I said, there's about 45, 50 people out there sampling every day and they love it. So, and it really is, I won't say there's never any, issues that come up or anything like that, but the issues that do come up are typically about pairing printers and, stuff that's really pretty simple to, solve, in a phone call. So, so anyway, that's one of our bigger projects. So one of the common questions we get is about data security, right? Very important. And so I'm not the developer, I'm not a coder, but I do know that a lot of this stuff's very important. It's a encrypted communication. We use two-factor authentication. So whenever you log in, we've all done it now where you sent a text on your phone, you got to then go back into the software, enter that code in, and you can log in. And it's when that there's some reason, there's either it's been a while since you logged in or you're using a new device, that kind of stuff, it will authenticate. It puts like a token on your device. If you just logged in, an hour ago and you're logging back in, you don't have to get that two-factor, but it's just very smart and intelligent. If there's any reason for it to detect it's somebody else, they'll do that two-factor authentication. And then there's all kinds of password protection stuff, right? We don't let you reuse passwords, so there's all kinds of stuff on there. Sometimes as a user, it's a pain, right? My bank makes me jump through hoops when I want to log into my bank account, but I'm, a little annoyed at times once in a while when I'm in a hurry, but ultimately I'm appreciative because they're protecting my money and making sure there's no bad actors getting in there. And then again, there's anomaly detection. We actually use Google Cloud storage. So everything that we have is in a Google Cloud. It's very segregated, and we use SQL Server. And then again, a little bit outside my area of expertise, but there is data backup. So no matter what happens, we're backing up almost continuously. So we can recover data an hour ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. We just set that time that we want to pull that back up, and we can pull it up. And then, like I said, we use Google Cloud, and they're probably one of the better, more secure places to store data. Even the federal government uses Google Cloud for storing a ton of data. So what's happening in the future? Well, we're constantly building new things. We talk to our customers every day about what they would like to see. In fact, our customers are usually the ones with the best ideas. And so we're adding new features and functionality all the time. And really probably one of the biggest things that we're working on right now, just had a meeting with a company about building us some AI stuff for being able to do predictive modeling, right? You've got a area of contamination, and we can do an image right now and show you what it looks like today, right? We can look today's data, map it out, show you what it looks like today. But what people really want to know is, what does it look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? So artificial intelligence will be able to look at all those variables: hydraulic connectivity, groundwater gradient, soil types, and be able to then model out what it looks like in the future. And the more data we have, the better those models get. And we've got a lot of data. And it's not just on like groundwater plumes. It could happen on wastewater treatment plant operations, right? So if you get a pH change, it can actually then be able to go, hey, your pH has changed. You might want to up, injecting some other type of pH balancing ingredient to bring it into the ranges that are going to be more effective. So there's all kinds of stuff in there. The one thing about AI is it's actually better at looking at data, and the little minutia of data changes in large volumes, and be able to make that type of predictions. And then this is, really great for groundwater pollution, and also for wastewater treatment plants as well. So what does all this mean? Digital tools are really going to make data. You can see from the different screen recordings, the validation, putting those guardrails on the type of data that can be entered to make sure it's accurate. And if there's some anomaly or something's out of norm, be able to comment on it or double check it. And then creating those alerts to make sure that the projects and samples that need to be collected are collected and delivered to the laboratory in a timely fashion. And then you're able to know when things are out of ordinary. So digital tools are really going to help kind of make all that happen. And then saving time, that's really the biggest thing, right? Save time, getting it done better, faster, cheaper. And, the way our pricing works is we actually let everyone use the data collection tools at no cost. So you can sign up, plan your projects, do your sampling. We don't, there's exceptions for drinking water and wastewater. But, and you can explore our free sample project management sample collection by just going to SampleServe.com, and you get signed up and start using it at no cost. We do make money off of our reporting. That's how we monetize. But if you're out there collecting samples, not everybody actually subscribes to our reporting services, but most of them do. So, okay, we've got time. I don't know where my time is, but I think we're pretty good.
All right. So if you have, I apologize. If you have a question, again, please go ahead and utilize that question toolbar. But I do have a couple of questions for you there, Russell. So with this app, is it for really any types of devices, iPhone, Androids, all that? It all is a formatted for all of them?
Yeah,
iPad?
so we recommend a tablet for two reasons. One, there's just more real estate for entering data. They'll work on phones, don't get me wrong, but there's a problem with using phones while you're collecting environmental samples, right? You don't, you're going to be holding your phone up to your face. So we basically say, hey, you should actually use a separate device. If you're collecting samples and taking a phone call, and you do, like if you're doing low flow sampling, you're entering data constantly, and if you're on a phone call or something like that, it's going to be different. So, and the devices are cheaper. If you're out there in a rough environment, I'd rather lose a $150 tablet than my, $1,500 cell phone. So, so we recommend tablets for the real estate primarily. We've optimized for tablets, an 8-inch to a 10-inch tablet. So, and again, their tablets are cheap. So $150 for this one right here. I just bought it. I'm buying tablets constantly, but I just bought this one 3 days ago off of Amazon.
Okay, good. What does it cost for the groundwater sampling?
So as I kind of alluded to, it is a We offer our project management tool where you can get in there and set up your projects and do all those alerts and everything at no cost. And then the mobile app is no cost. We do charge a flat fee per facility for drinking water facilities and wastewater facilities. And the reason is on the groundwater, surface water, soil, most people are doing that and they're going to be creating graphics. And we can sell graphics, but when you're doing drinking water and wastewater, you don't really need any graphics. You just need to know, it's a table, which is easy to do. You don't really need to know like where the samples are collected because they're always at the same spot. You're really interested in is an exceedance or not. So there's not much reporting in terms of graphics. And so we got to monetize it somehow. So we actually just charge a flat rate. And it ranges from $90 a month to $200 a month per facility.
Okay. Now, is this something that if there's, you're thinking about field operations, there could be tons of field samplers. So does the company, when they purchase this, do they have a login where they have someone that, different user ability where it's someone who maybe wants to monitor their group to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing for the day? And is there someone is it like a company, they buy this from a company setup, or they can be the, for us, we have like the admin user, and then you have different technicians so they can see, everything they're doing daily.
Yeah, so we, first of all, unlimited users, we don't charge per user. So if you've got a company, let's say you got 30 employees, somebody would create their company account. They'll create what we call as a workspace. It'll be like a unique URL where your data is at. So it could be ABC Consulting. They'll create their workspace, and their workspace will be ABC Consulting at SampleServe.com, and not at, but .sampleserve.com. And they'll create, they can invite people. There'll be an owner of that account, and then they'll have administrative people they can invite, and those would be managers. There's different permissions allowed, and then they have field technicians. Field technicians can only enter data. They can't delete anything, and they can't invite anyone else. So an admin can invite people. Field technicians can't invite anyone else, and they can only enter data. They can't delete data. So yes, to answer your question, that's how we break out where your work and data is stored, and you invite people to that location.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. And then what kind of success stories do you have? Does this software, helped? A lot of times you hear the stories, where there's some type of litigation things going on, and, it goes all the way back to the sampling group to provide data and anything that comes into question. Is this, I don't know if this is a rise, and I'm not asking for like personal information or anything like that about companies, but has this helped people with that kind of?
Oh, so when as a former field technician, whenever there's a problem with any kind of data, the first person that gets blamed is the field technician, right? They'll be like, hey, you sampled the wrong location, or they get two results that are, this one used to be lower and this one used to be higher. And and all of a sudden the results come back and they're different. The first thing you do is go, the guy switched, he sampled the wrong location. He's put the wrong labels on the, and we then are able to look at the data and go, okay, when he sampled MW4 at this time, he was standing 6 feet away when he hit the sample button, because I know where he was standing and I know what time and where that MW4 is at. And, and then I can tell on the other sample where they were standing, and you can go, I don't think because the labels are printed right at that time, right? And you've only got one set of labels, and you pull out bottles and fill them up. So we're 99.999% sure that he sampled the right location because he was 4 feet away. So that scenario's happened many times, and field technicians are very grateful because they can, and that data is available to them to go capture, go pull anytime they want. And they're like, great, look, here's where I was standing 4 feet away. I'm pretty sure I sampled the right location. So, and then that chain of custody is captured as well. The screen recording technology, we had a guy who was actually going out, and he was kind of anti-technology guy. There's a lot of older people who are like afraid of technology. So he was actually collecting his samples on paper, and then later, a day or two later, actually entering the information into the mobile device because his company wanted him to do it. All of a sudden, the date and time stamps and everything on the app were different than what he wrote on the label. He was hand filling out his labels too. And, you know, they're like, well, what's wrong here? Like, things are screwed up, and they were able to figure out that he wasn't using the app as he was supposed to. So, you know, now that guy's actually one of our biggest fans because he finally got, you know, brought into the digital world, and he was like, hey, this is actually saving me a bunch of time. He didn't have to go back home and like enter data later. So,
Right.
it's a couple of stories. You know, and there was a question of whether or not he was actually sampling properly, right? In water sampling, there's been many stories, I'm sure everyone's hears of it, of somebody, you know, supposed to go out and collect drinking water samples from around the city, but you know, they've been in the job for 20 years and like it's always clean. I don't have to worry about it. So they sit at home and fill all the samples up at their kitchen sink. And now we're able to say where they were when they sampled what, you know. So there's none of that that's going to be able to be done anymore if they're using our app.
Right. Oh, interesting. Well, it sounds like it's been pretty successful.
Yeah,
For
we're
you
actually,
and industry. How many people just off the top of your head still are writing things down like that?
most people are. Yeah, I would say it's in the 90+% of the people are still using paper. But you know, we're like when we just built a version of our app for Eurofins. You probably heard of them before. So if you go to the Google Play Store or Apple Store right now, you can download the Eurofins Field app, and you're going to be like, oh, it looks exactly like the SampleServe app. It's got their logo and their colors, but it is our app. It's a copy of our app that we license to them. So I think it's going to be the way things are done in the future. Every lab is going to have its own app. We're happy to provide those 2 labs at no cost. The only agreement we have is that they have to let the users opt into our reporting function. So that's kind of a distribution model we're looking for our technology, is to offer copies of white labeled versions of our app, and they can, so if you're a lab out there and you want a field app that is very functional and got a lot of value and no cost, then you do have to pay your own Apple Store and Google Store fees, but all those are pretty cheap. So.
All right, great. All right, so I think that wraps up the questions for the session. If you could just escalate to the next
Yep.
slide. Just wanted to let everyone know we have a couple more training events this month. January, I have to apologize, it's not the 21st and 22nd. I believe it's just the 22nd. Made a little typo on that one, but it is on our website, 21st. Just a 2-hour workshop on determining calibration intervals for laboratory equipment. We do provide certificates on our free workshops. That will be done by Matthew Sika. And then on the 28th, another program we offer, some might be aware, is 17020. So we will be having a webinar similar to this with on 17020, the roadmap to inspection agency accreditation. And then later in February, those that are working on becoming accredited or maybe have new staff that are going to be assisting with the 17025 accreditation. We have a reasonable 2-day overview course that you can register for. Those are all available on our website. Next slide. Okay, and lastly, if there's any questions that you have, I put both my email there if you're interested in talking about maybe getting your field sampling group accredited. Maybe you already have accreditation with us or not at all. You know, please contact me to discuss that further. And then if you have any questions for Russell, there's his email and contact information and website as well, and he'd be happy to to assist you. Okay, so with that, Russell, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really interesting presentation, and hopefully we can do another one in the future. And Happy New Year, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.